It's your girl Kathleen, aka Kasurin, aka Sorin, and we are back for another episode of Sorin Soapbox. Get into it, get into it. Welcome to another episode of Sorin Soapbox. Here we talk about all things love, life, and the plot twist that comes with both. If you are a new listener, I say welcome, welcome, welcome. We love new listeners. We love new people around here. Come on in, enjoy yourself. And if you're a returning listener, I love you. Thank you so much for coming back. Thank you for kicking it with your girl. We are about to get into it today. So, whether you are new or returning, I want you to grab you something to drink, grab you some water so you can stay hydrated in this heat, grab you some coffee, some wine, some tea, whatever your drink of choice is, but drink responsibly, okay? We are going to get into today's episode. So, first things first, I usually like to start off our episodes with what I call Sorin's life update, where I basically just talk about what's been going on for the past 2 weeks or since the last episode. And honestly, not much has been happening, if I'm being completely transparent. I've just been trying to stay in this house because this heat is unbearable. And it's sad for me because I love summertime. Summertime is probably my favorite season. Even though I am an October baby, I just love the summer. I love wearing sundresses and skirts and not having to worry about 50 million layers in the wintertime and feeling like I'm still cold to the bone. I enjoy the summer. But I think this is my last summer saying that. Yeah, maybe it's because it's landlocked. I don't live close to a beach, and maybe that's why I feel like this summer has been insufferable. And maybe I'd feel differently if I went to a Caribbean island or somewhere like that, whether I went to Antigua or Jamaica or Turks and Caicos, maybe I'd feel a little different about the summer. But if I'm being honest, I think I'm over the summer, which is sad for me to say because, again, I love the summer. I think I'm ready to be a spring and fall girly. My only issue, especially with the spring, is that it feels like winter 2.0. Like, spring don't know if it want to be hot or cold, and that be pissing me off. But so far, I remember last year, the fall here was still pretty warm, just not summertime warm. So I think I could get behind the fall, but I think this is my last summer because, child, it being 107, 109 degrees, 102, and I have to go outside and be an adult, those two things do not go together. So the summer's been pissing me off. Like, this is the type of summer you want to fight somebody in. But either way, I've just been trying to stay cool, stay in the house, and go outside unless it's absolutely necessary. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have much going on these past 2 weeks. School has started, so I've been in and out of this classrooms these past couple of weeks, but it's pretty much like the beginning of school type stuff. So learning the syllabus, get to know your classmates, that type of stuff. So it's nothing real serious if I'm being honest. But yeah, that's pretty much been the past 2 weeks that I've been since the last time I came on here. So yeah, we can just wrap up Sonia's life update. But I'd love to know, for any of my listeners, how has your August been so far? Have you done any vacations? Have you gone on any trips? Have the kiddos gone back to school for you? And if so, what's that been like? Because I know there's been a lot of changes with the educational system, so I'm curious to see like how that unfolds. Not to get too dark or too serious, but yeah, chime in, let me know how the month of August is, how you're feeling, what's going on. I'd love to hear from you. So with that quickly out of the way, let's jump into some pop culture news. And to be honest, I have a love-hate relationship with social media right now. I think it's because I'm trying to find different ways to just disconnect from everything that's going on in the world, from the presidency to the National Guards to all these things. And I think the shows and the movies that I normally used to watch, some of them are starting to like include a lot of political stuff, and it's just like, I'm looking for escapism and you're not providing it. And I think that's why like I've kind of turned into some of my current hobbies, which is like I've always loved reading, so like I've been reading a lot more. I have been gaming a lot more. I have a Switch, so I've been doing like simulator games, like a house flipping game, which is pretty fun. I was making a lot of money on that, to be honest. So but yeah, I was flipping houses. I was owning cafes, just things again to allow me to escape, because it just feels like even some of the pop culture stuff, it's connected to racism or what's going on with the government. And I'm just like, I'm tired. Like, I'm mentally spent when it comes to a lot of the pop culture stuff going on, that I'm just like, I honestly can't be bothered. And so yeah, sometimes I'm scrolling through TikTok or Instagram and I see someone's like, oh, people are acting like this, or people talking about this, and I'm just like, I don't care. it's too much. I'm just overstimulated, to be honest, which is why I got into like diamond painting, because I could just throw on, a random show, which I find myself watching a lot of the shows I watched as a kid, because that seems to give me a little bit more, I don't know, peace, for lack of better words. But again, I understand that the stuff that I watch still has some sort of political gain or political thread, I should say. For example, like X-Men, or I started picking up Star Wars again, and I'm trying to watch the shows to kind of follow the timeline of the Star Wars universe. Obviously, there's a lot of political themes in Star Wars. I think my sister and I were thinking about picking up Game of Thrones again, but every time I think about picking up Game of Thrones, I'm constantly thinking about the Red Wedding, how dirty they did Jon Snow, and then lastly, how they changed up Khaleesi, because why would you do that? Yeah, so it's just between those three, the Red Wedding, Jon Snow, and Khaleesi. I just don't know if I could pick the show back up again, if I'm honest. As if I've never seen it before. Because my body clenches at those moments, like, and if you've never seen Game of Thrones, then I'm sorry, but there's probably gonna be spoilers in this. But, the killing of Ned Stark and the Red Wedding, and just, don't get me wrong. There were a lot of, like, beautiful, vengeful moments where it's like, oh, you got your just due. But at the same time, it's hard for me to try and pick it back up. Like, I don't remember any of that. Shout out to anybody who could watch Game of Thrones like it's the first time, or who's able to watch it as their comfort show. I cannot. But then again, I'm no better. I'm the girl whose her nostalgia shows are like CSI and Criminal Minds. I could put Criminal Minds in the background and go about my business, and I could probably tell you what the episode is in the first couple of minutes. Like, oh, this is the episode where the guy does this, that, and the third, where the girl that, like, I could tell you within the first couple of minutes what the episode is about. Maybe that's a problem, but I'm not listening to you anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, so going back into pop culture, it's hard for me to find anything worth, entertaining. The last episode I talked about Beyonce versus Michael Jackson, just because I thought that was just such an interesting topic, because I didn't realize it was a real debate. I didn't realize like that was an actual thing, which shout out to one of my friends. She gave me more context about the Michael Jackson concert where he's just standing there and people are passing out, because her mom is obsessed with Michael Jackson. And when he passed, they watched that concert on DVD. And she was basically telling me how, I don't know if it was Ticketmaster or whoever was doing the tickets at the time, they had more people than they had seats. So because people were so like packed in that stadium like sardines, I'm sure people were passing out because of Michael Jackson, but she did indicate like that room was hot, there's bodies on top of bodies, and that people just passed out due to heat exhaustion and everything else. So I thought that was an interesting take on that, because I've never seen the full concert at all. So I appreciate the fact that she gave me context to why people were passing out. Yes, some people were obviously passing out because of Michael Jackson, but I think in the screaming and the yelling and the jumping up and down, they became, dehydrated and experienced heat exhaustion that caused people to pass out. So that was a really good, insight to that conversation that I didn't know about. And I love that. But yeah, so I thought that was an interesting conversation. I think if I'm going to talk about anything pop culture, is the Black Scottish and Black American conversation that's been happening, and finding our Scottish cousins. And I just love the solidarity and the unity that's happening, where it's just like, I saw that apparently people here in America are planning to make a trip to Glasgow in August of 2026 to have like a cousins reunion, a cousins get together. And even my sister and I were looking up like how much flights would be, where we would stay, all that type of stuff. Because honestly, I wouldn't mind going to like Edinburgh or Glasgow, or just exploring Scotland in itself. I'm someone who wants to travel. I've always wanted to go to Ireland because, again, there's a Black community in Ireland. I've always wanted to go to Portugal, Spain, Greece, all of these things. And I love the conversation that's happening around like exploring and finding our Black Scottish cousins, because obviously we know there's Black people everywhere. There is Black people everywhere. I think it's the fact that we've never seen Black Scottish people on our television. Now, my sister, she watches Love Island UK and some other UK shows, so she's come across them already, so she's not taken aback and surprised. But I imagine that's a small niche of people who watch shows like Love Island UK and have experienced that already, that they're not taken aback. But for the general populace of us Black people, I think seeing a black sky just completely blew our minds in a way like, wait, of course there's Black people in Scotland. I saw something else where it was like, oh, we can't wait for the Black Americans to discover the Black Italians. And I'm like, y'all need to jump on this. Like, we need to make this a tour, okay? First stop is Scotland, next stop is Italy. Shoot, like let's go to all the places that the Black people are, and we can come together and have like a nice little kickback. Like that's what I'm looking for. I would love to see an international kickback of Black people just getting together, and then the final destination is we all come together for Dirty December in Nigeria or Ghana, because 9 times out of 10 that's where we all came from anyway. I would love to see something like that. Like Black people really pull their money together and we take these international trips and see where our cousins and our family members are from, and then we all go back to the motherland for one big hurrah, aka Dirty December, and just celebrate. Listen, if somebody puts that together, sign me up, okay? Sign me up. But anyways, yeah, I thought that was just really cool to see the different cultures, and for a lot of the Black Scottish content creators to come on and show us a day in a life, that they have beauty supply stores, they have Black owned businesses. A lot of them eat Caribbean and African foods because there tends to be a very large population of them, that they, they got drip, they got swag, their styles, their dress. Like I seen one girl, she was showing her nails. I was like, let's go. Like, this is the conversation I want. This is where I want to be. I don't want to be in all that other stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. I know I can't escape the realities of the world we're living in, but I just want to regress to my childhood for just a little bit, where I could just make her happy. I can buy all the things that I wanted when I was a kid. Like, I feel like this is the millennial midlife crisis, right? Is like, we're buying up Funko Pops, we're buying Labubus, we're playing games, we're dressing up in cosplay. All the things that just make us happy while the world is falling apart. Because let's be honest, we have been through multiple end of the world situations. Depending on how old you were there for Columbine, you were there for, I think it was Virginia Tech, you were there for the 9/11, you were there for the anthrax, you were here for COVID, you were here for just all of the Armageddon moments in this life. That it's like, yeah, if I want to put on a koala onesie and color all day and listen to Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Mariah Carey and 90s Brandy and Monica, since they're now back on tour, which is healing my inner Black girl, I am allowed to do that. And who gonna check me? In Creole, we say, Vin Batme. Who gonna fight me? Nobody. So anyways, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about with pop culture. It's just the fact that I really love the conversation of the Black Scots and Americans and us finding our cousins. But everything else, I keep finding like other content creators who are problematic, who are racist, and I'm like, I'm at the point now that I want to delete my socials, but I understand that I kind of need my socials, so I'm in a conundrum as we speak. But anyways, that's pretty much my pop culture. If there's anything I might have missed in pop culture, come on in and tell me. Let me know what you've been seeing. Have you seen the conversation where the Scots and the Americans were like coming together and bonding? How do you feel about it? What are your thoughts? What are you doing to escape what's currently happening right now in the Americas? Because it's taking every part of me to not book a ticket international and get out of Dodge. Like, it's taking everything in me not to be like, oh, let me go back to Korea. Let me go find a new country. Let me go to Ghana. Let me go to Scotland. Let me get out of Dodge. Like, it's taking everything in me to not find a new country to move to because of what's going on. I would love to know, how are you processing what's happening right now? Again, what is your millennial midlife crisis looking like? What is your escapism looking like? Are you just plowing through it and keeping your head down, or keeping your head buried in the sand? Are you finding other hobbies that maybe you really enjoyed as a kid and you're picking them back up? I'm curious to know what you're doing to kind of get through this. So yeah, make sure you hit me up in the comments, hit me up on my socials, let me know how that is working out for you. All right, and so now we are going to get to the bulk of today's episode, which, if you've noticed by the title, I've called this episode When Good Girls Grieve. And I want to take my time to really unpack this topic and dive into it with you guys. So if you notice that maybe I'm slowing how I speak, it's because I understand how sensitive this topic can be and how approaching this topic could either make or break people. And maybe for some people, they don't think that, but I think once I start to kind of unpack this, I hope you can hear my heart on this and know that I'm trying to tread very lightly in this conversation, not because I'm afraid or anything like that, but I just want to be very gentle, very empathetic, and very understanding as someone who's also kind of who's gone through this and still going through what it feels like to grieve as a quote unquote good girl. And for when I use terms like good girls, good guys, bad guys, I'm using air quotes. So just know that just because I don't, I think it's kind of hard to create an absolute when we're describing people. Yes, you may have certain attributes that are indicative of being good or indicative of being bad according to society, but I don't want to use these absolute labels on people when we as a people are multifaceted and we have layers. And so to just dub something as good or dub something as bad feels kind of diminishing and simplistic. So I just want to be I want to make everyone aware of that. So if I say the word good girls or good guys, bad guys, just know I'm using air quotes with that because I feel like we as humans have too many layers to really simplify it to just one adjective. So just want to get that out of the way and clear. So, for context, I saw a video on Instagram where it was a girl crying and talking about why no one is talking about grieving being a good girl. Again, air quotes, being a good girl when you don't get the things that you've been praying for or hoping for or believing that you should receive. And there was a girl who stitched the video and basically talked about how she believed that being a good girl was a scam and that growing up in the church, she was made to believe that if she was a good girl, and I will explain what that means later, just giving context of where this topic is coming from. But she basically was saying that once she realized that the bad girls were still getting all the things that were supposedly promised to the good girls. Once she got to college, she basically stepped into her rebellion streak and did all the things from drinking, smoking, etc., having sex, and she ended up receiving all the things that she thought she would get as a good girl. And so she obviously went into a lot more depth about it. I'm just trying to summarize it, but basically saying that you need to live your life how you see fit, not according to rules and regulations where you think that you're going to get certain things, certain benefits because you are a good girl. So that's where the topic is coming from. And when I saw the video, it tugged on my heart because I understood both perspectives. I understand what it feels like to walk in step of being a good girl and doing everything that you're supposed to in hopes for things to work out in a certain way or to receive certain outcomes. And I also understand what it means to be rebellious and be like, you know what, forget all of this. Like, I'm going to do my own thing, essentially. And so today I want to unpack the idea of what it looks like when a good girl grieves, but also ask the question, do you think being a good girl is a scam? Is this a scheme that Todd set up to hit us with the BS? That's the question I want to lead with is being a good girl a scam? Is this a scheme that Todd set up? And what does it look like to grieve as a good girl? So again, I'm just being very intentional about my words. So if I'm again speaking slower, it's because I don't want to bulldoze through this topic and through this conversation because I understand there's a lot of nuance and layers to being a good girl or being a bad girl or good guy, bad guy that I don't want to dismiss. I want to hold space for that. I want to be compassionate. I want to be empathetic about. Because I understand like the idea of being a good girl, good guy is that you have this thought process of, oh, I thought that if I was being faithful, I thought that if I was doing all the things that God told me to do, or that the church told me to do rather, I would reap certain benefits, and yet I feel like I've been overlooked. I feel forgotten. I feel dismissed. And I think these are the three emotions we can focus on, is feeling forgotten, dismissed, and overlooked. Whereas it seems like the bad guy, the bad girl, they're receiving all of the blessings. They're receiving all of the good things. They're receiving all the things that, again, as a good girl, good guy, you thought you would get. So I kind of want to first start off with unpacking we'll say good person, because I want to talk about men and women in this conversation, the good person conditioning. And I think it just stems from the fact of like, in the church, we are made to believe that if we do everything to be good, which would mean like you're not lying, you follow all the 10 commandments, you pray all the time, you go to church services, you tithe, you save yourself from marriage, you don't cuss, you don't drink, you don't do all of these things, that they somehow guarantee a blessing. That by following this list of rules and regulations, that God will bless you financially, that God will bless you with a marriage, God will bless you with a home, God will bless you with the family that you want, God will bless you in all areas of your life. And I want to be very transparent to say that there is a part of that that's true. There is an aspect of that that is true, that the word says, if you follow my commandments, not necessarily that I will bless you, but good things will follow you if you follow my commandments. And I think that's just the understanding, right? In the Bible, obviously, when we talk about the Lord, it's like, oh, you will have everything in the garden as long as you not eat from this tree. And then what happens? We eat from the tree, and now all of these bad consequences, aka sin, came into the world. So there is a place where the logic makes sense. It's like, oh, had Adam and Eve not eaten from the tree, we wouldn't have received the bad consequences. Had they followed the rules, they would have been blessed. So I could see the correlation between the two of, you do good, you get good results. You do bad, you get bad results. But the question that we're looking into is, what happens when you do bad but you get good consequences, and then if you do good, you get bad consequences? Like, how do we reconcile with that? And obviously, no one will ever understand the mind of Christ, the mind of God, because it is infinite. But I think there are certain aspects of it that we can come to terms with, we can be peaceful with. Because it's like, in the church, we're hearing the message of like, oh, if you save yourself, God will send you a husband or a wife. Or if you're patient, God will reward you with the job and the finances and this and the third. These are the messagings that we hear and that are ingrained in us from the time we are a child, that naturally you're assuming that if I walk this out the way that God told me to, or as the church told me, I will receive the things that the Bible says I should receive. But I think the problem that we're running into is that you hear all the time people say Christianity is not about religion, it's about relationship. And my mentor mentioned something really, really good, is that I think we stop there when there's actually more, but wait, there's more. I think we have to realize that our relationship with God is not one of transaction. And I think that's where the good person, bad person conversation comes into play, is the assumption. And I'm not saying this is for everybody, but I think the bulk of those who believe that I was good, I followed the rules, I didn't cuss, I didn't drink, I didn't go to the parties, I didn't do drugs, I didn't sleep around, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. So therefore, God should reward me, or therefore, I expect God to reward me with the husband, the cars, the finances, the children, the health. I shouldn't be sick. I shouldn't have these things. But I think we assume that we make the relationship with Christ transactional when it should be about intimacy and relationship. And I'm going to give a story in a second, but I think that's the problem that we have. We treat God like a genie or a slot. I think we treat God more like a slot machine than a genie. And I think we assume if we put the coins of, I didn't do drugs, ding, I didn't have sex, ding, I didn't go to the parties, ding, you know what I mean? Like, I went to church, 4 times a week. Ding, I pray and do my devotions every morning. Ding, and then you pull the lever, pull the lever crunk, and you assume you're going to hit sevens. You assume that you're going to receive an outpouring of all those blessings that I talked about. And the reality is, God is not a slot machine. I think we forget that our obedience isn't about outcome. It's not about what comes out. It's about having an intimacy and alignment with God. It's about having our heart posture directed towards Him so that we are attuned to Him. Because the reality is, whether we are good or bad, God doesn't owe us anything. Now, because He is a good God, and that I'm not using air quotes, I'm using that as a definitive, because He is a good God, He wants to give us good gifts. Because it talks about it in the Bible. It says, what kind of father, if you ask for bread, he would give you a stone? If you ask for one thing, they give you a scorpion. That's not a good father who gives good gifts. And throughout the Bible, we see a story of a good God who wants to bless us and wants to do good things for us. It even says in Jeremiah, for I know the plans that I have for you, to prosper you and not to harm you. It's within God's power to want to give you good gifts and give you good things. But that's not indicative of because you've been good, you're now owed something. That's not true. Because if we were going to say that, why is someone like Jesus, who came to this earth, who was good, and the full definition of good, received all the bad consequences of sins that should have been ours to take? Because if we're going to talk about being good in one way versus bad, then Jesus shouldn't have suffered the bad consequences that he did because he was a good person. He walked this earth and did not sin. And that's the caliber. If he was good and he walked this earth and did and experienced all the bad, then who are we who are sinners to say, I've been good, I am owed X, Y, and Z? We're not. We're not owed anything, but it's because of God's grace and mercy that He decides to give us good gifts because He's a good father. And I know for some of us who don't have good relationships with our fathers or our parents, have a hard time understanding that and grasping that. But the idea is He is a good God. He wants to give us good gifts. But that doesn't mean that if you follow certain rules, that automatically means you'll get something good out of it. Because that's not that's not how life works. That's not how life works. The idea is that we are to shape our desires in alignment with what God wants and not have a mentality like an entitlement mentality. That's really what it is at the end of the day. I've been good, so I'm entitled to these good blessings. These people are bad. They're not doing what they're supposed to, and therefore they shouldn't receive good gifts. But the Bible even talks about that He is not a respecter of persons and that God doesn't look like the outward appearance, He looks at the heart. So, what we may deem as someone who's bad receiving good gifts, we don't actually know the full scope of this person. We don't know the full range of this person. We don't know what they've experienced. We don't know what their trials are. We don't know what their tribulations are. We don't know what their relationship is. We don't know anything. So to label somebody without proper context, to say these people are bad and yet they're reaping good benefits, it's limiting. It's limiting for lack of better words. And I think we have a tendency to see these bad people on social media and we're just getting highlight reels of their relationship or their life rather. We're not getting the full story. And I think we're also leaving out context in that some, I'm going to say men and women, sometimes they just reject the rules. Maybe it's from a place of rebellion, maybe it's from a place of survival or trauma or exhaustion because like I'm tired of carrying this load on my back. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm just going to do me. And I could understand that as someone who was a pastor's kid and the eldest daughter to immigrants, there was a certain image I needed to uphold. I needed to look like the pastor's kid. I needed to be the good girl to get the good grades and do all these things. But then it ended up making me a people pleaser. And I self abandoned what I actually wanted and what I actually desired in certain circumstances because I just wanted to appeal to the masses. I didn't want to show that there was cracks in my, you know, in my facade. I was sending a good girl representative where it's like, I don't think this actually aligns with who I am. And to be honest, like even the good girls, you might not be drinking or going to parties and stuff like that, but if you're gossiping, if you're jealous of other people, if you're envious, if you're, as the Bible says, backbiting, none of this is considered good behavior. And so I think, again, the word good and bad is so limiting because there's no nuance to it. Because, like, are you good 365, 366 on a leap year, 24/7? You don't have any bad moment? You don't have any bad time? Like, are you really considered good all the time? The only time humanity was considered good is when God created us and said, it is good. Once sin came into the world, there's nothing good about any of us if we're being transparent. And that's not to shade anybody, that's not to shame anyone. It's just the reality is that Jesus came so that we could be good in his eyes because his blood washed over us. And I'm not trying to get preachy, but I think saying as a good girl, I should have received this and the third, according to what? According to what? Because now I'm having to question, is your relationship with God out of sincerity because you love him? Because he saved you? Because he saved your heart? He saved your mind? He saved your soul? Or is it because you have a relationship with God that's transactional, that you're hoping that, oh, if I love God, I won't go to hell like everybody else. If I love God, I'll get a husband. If I love God, I'll get a wife. If I love God, I'm going to get this, I'm going to be wealthy. If I love God, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z. And that's not how none of this works. And so I think to just assume that, oh, why are these bad people getting good things? We don't actually know. And the thing is, I'm gonna dive into this a little bit. We don't know what cost people paid to get the quote unquote good things. And that's why I'm never jealous of anybody. If I see somebody and they're showing off their accolades or what they got, I don't envy or become jealous of what they have. I just congratulate because at the end of the day, I don't know what it cost to get that. And I don't know if I'm willing to pay that price. A girl who maybe was only dating for 2 months, got engaged and is turned around and get married. I don't know what she had to pay for that. I don't know what she paid on the back end. And I don't know again if that's the price I'm willing to pay. Because who knows how many nights she's cried, how many nights she's fasted, how many nights she's this. Or we could go on the flip side. I don't know how many men she slept with. I don't know whose husband she took. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know none of that. And so to sit here and see somebody receiving what's considered a good benefit or consequence, I don't know what you had to go through to get that. And quite frankly, I just want what God has for me. I don't want what somebody else has because I don't know what strings came attached to it or what had to be paid. Okay? And there's a story in the Bible that I kind of want to go over really quickly, is the story of the prodigal son. So if you're familiar with the story, you have this rich, I think he was like a rich ruler, rich father, we'll just say, rich father who had two sons. The younger son basically said, Dad, I don't want to live up under this house. I don't want nothing to do with you. Give me my half of the inheritance, which at that time would have been basically a F you to his face. I wish you were dead. And because you're not dead, I want my half of the inheritance right now. I don't give a freak about you. That essentially is how the story is. And so the father, being who he is and being benevolent, gave his son his half of the inheritance. The son goes out, he's outside. He goes to party, he goes to drink, he runs through his money, he got girls, he got this, he got that. And then his money runs dry. He is at the end of his rope. He's forced to work at a pigsty. And at that time, he's, like I said, down on his luck. And he starts looking at the pigs and he sees that essentially they're eating good. And he's like, child, maybe I need to eat what the pigs are eating. And then he realizes, well, you know what? Let me go back to my father's house, not as his son, because I already took my inheritance, but I recognize that even his servants live better than how I'm living right now. So this son runs home, and the story basically says that the dad is waiting at the door, looking every day, waiting for his son to come home. And the moment he sees his son coming even a yard away, this man goes running. He embraces his son. He kisses him. He loves on him, and he throws this big party because he basically says the son that he thought was dead is now alive, and they can embrace. We're going to talk about him, and then we're going to talk about the other brother. In this situation, The younger brother or the younger son would be considered the bad guy because you took your inheritance, you ran through it, you ran through the six with your woes, you did all hood rat things with your hood rat friends, and then decided to come back. And then here you are, you come into the house, and basically none of that matters. You're still welcomed into the fold as a son, you're still loved on, you're still cared on. He's considered the bad guy. But then there's the older son who never left, who followed all the rules, who did everything that his father told him to do, who cleaned up after himself, who did yard work, who did everything. He looks at the younger son with envy and bitterness and resentment. And he doesn't want to be a part of the party because he's sick to his stomach. And when the father asks him, "How come you're not joining?" he says, "I have never left. I've done everything that you've asked me to do. I've done everything that I was supposed to do. And not once did you ever throw me a party. Not once did you ever give me, I think you said something like a young goat or something, so I could go kill and have a feast and do things with my friends. Not once." And he walks off angry. That son was considered the good son. And yet he had so much bitterness and anger in his heart towards the fact that the father did so much for the quote unquote bad son. When the reality is that good son could have always asked for a party. It was not it's not like it wasn't available to him. He just didn't think to ask. He didn't think to just be honest and say, "Hey dad, can I have X, Y, and Z? I know my brother left and this, that, and the third, but I'd really love it if I could have a little get together with my friends." The older son, being good, assumed that the father would say no. And I think this is a very good example of how you have two people growing up in the same house with two different experiences. You have the quote unquote younger son, who's the bad one, but receives all the good consequences, and the good son who had bitterness and hate and resentment in his heart, not receiving anything, receiving the bad consequences. And I think that's an important story to pay attention to because both sons were still loved by the father. Both sons were still loved, and both of them could ask anything of the father without receiving rejection. And I think that's an important story for us to really think about because there's no right or wrong in this story. It's just about perspective, it's just about experience, it's just about the younger son had a little bit more gusto, I guess you can say, to ask and say, "Hey, I want my money." I'm not saying that that was right, but guess what? He still got his money. And then once he was at his wit's end, he said, "You know what? Let me go back home because at least my father as a servant would treat me better." He wasn't even trying to go back as a son. He was trying to go back as a servant. Meanwhile, the good son, the good girl, the good guy is sitting at home following all the rules, and you're mad because you didn't get the consequence. You didn't get anything. You didn't ask. And I think that's where we're getting stuck in is that there's a lot of nuances and there's a lot of layers to this that I don't think I can unpack in this episode. But I think it's just very minimizing to just call someone good and bad and assume that the consequences or the benefits that they're reaping is as a result of their quote unquote behavior. Because at the end of the day, bad people can still receive good gifts and good people can receive bad gifts. And God says all the time, He's not a respecter of person. And I know for some people, maybe that's hard to reconcile with because then it's like, oh, so then what's the point of all of this? The point isn't to be obedient to God for the sake of getting something. The point is being obedient because you love Him. Imagine if you were good friends to somebody because you were expecting to get something from them. That's not a good friend. Imagine your parent, you as a parent, you're being kind to your kid because you're expecting something from them. That's not a good parent. The fact of the matter is, when you're being nice or good to people in hopes to receive something, that's manipulation. If we really want to call a spade, that's manipulation. So imagine you're being good and following the rules to God because you want something from Him. When one, He already said He would give it to you, but you're intentionally reaching out to do this because you're hoping for all the benefits that come with it. And to me, it reminds me of something I always say in my prayer is that God, I want your presence more than the present. I want to seek your face more than I want to seek your hand. And I think that's where we're running into the issue, is that we just want what comes out of God's hand, the gifts, the blessings, the money, etc., but we're not seeking his face. We're not getting to know God for who he is and his multifaceted ways. And so that's why I think this conversation of grieving a good girl, or, is being a good girl a scam? Yes, it is, because you're using manipulation tactics. You're using a transactional relationship and hoping that you'll get something. Not everybody's supposed to be married. Not everybody's supposed to have children. Not everybody's supposed to be wealthy. Not everybody's supposed to be CEO. Some of us are meant to be employees, and that's okay. God can still use you whether you're a CEO or an employee. And I think that's where we start to miss a lot of the nuances. We miss so much because we're stuck on the transactional aspect of it. And I think at the end of the day, the idea of being a good girl or a good guy, there's such a disconnection. And I think we need to heal if we feel like I've been a good girl and I'm not getting, because reality is I could easily wallow and sulk about the fact that I am a quote unquote good girl, and yet I'm still waiting for the promises of God. If that's what I was waiting for, girl is universal for me. So girl, I would have been left the fold. I would have been left this behind. But I was never a good girl for the sake of what I was going to get from God. God has just been really, really good to me, even when the times I didn't realize he was good to me. Even in the times when I was angry at him and I felt like I was abandoned, overlooked, and neglected, he still was good to me, which is what I talked about in the first episode when I came back, was that I was angry because I had that same thought process. I've been doing everything I'm supposed to do, and yet here I am struggling, and I don't understand. And it was never for my harm. It was always for my good. The trials and tribulations that I've endured have always been for my benefit. It's been to prune me. It's been to refine me. It's been to strengthen me. And it's made me a better person, not just for myself, but for others around me. When you're being pruned, pruning has to do with fruits of the spirit. When you're talking about the spiritual realm, the fruits that I have, those fruits aren't for me to take part of. The fruits are for other people to be able to pick off of me and enjoy. And when they say, oh my God, you have so much joy on you, you have so much peace on you, how? Why? You're in such a tumultuous period of your life. How are you still smiling? How are you still joyful? How are you still peaceful? And I'm just like, it's not me. It don't got nothing to do with me. And I think that's where we overlook that. And I think in understanding the good girl, bad girl, good guy, bad guy conversation, I think there's a transformation that needs to happen. That this is, again, about relationship, but not just any relationship, an intimate relationship versus having a transactional relationship. You trying to be a good girl is you trying to control, trying to manipulate, or trying to perform in a way, hoping that you will get certain results. And that's not how God operates. That's not the relationship that God wants for us. So I think to kind of bring this all full circle, I think the real blessing in, if you choose to do this walk with God, regardless of the blessings and the rewards that you receive, I think it's, again, like I said, wanting to seek his presence and seek his face is the real reward. There's nothing wrong with, of course, desiring, a spouse or a baby or a paycheck. But I think we need to not make an idol out of any of this. And I think that's what it boils down to, is idolatry. You idolize being a good girl. You idolize being a good guy. And you couldn't comprehend why someone who doesn't follow the same rule book as you is still, from the outside looking in, being blessed, receiving all the things that you, again, feel entitled to you. So I think the goal just needs to be that you align yourself and posture yourself in a way that whatever God has for you, you are open to receiving it. That you are just about in alignment and you're not about achievement. It's not about a checklist. It's just about having an intimate relationship with him. And I think For anyone who's listening, I just invite you, like, if you do fall under the category of being a good girl or a good guy, that you do grieve it. My sister and I like to have a 24-hour funeral when things don't turn out our way or things don't go the way that we thought they would be. We give ourselves a 24-hour funeral, whatever that looks like for us, to soak, to cry, to weep, to be upset, to be angry. As Aaliyah says, at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. And I think in that, after you grieve, I think it's imperative to reframe your expectation of God. And sometimes, honestly, I've learned this as well through my mentorship with sexology. Unspoken expectation breeds resentment. And I think it's important for us to bring those expectations to God and see what he says about them. Again, there's nothing wrong with desire, none of that. But I think sometimes we have a desire, we run with it, and then we invite God halfway through. I think with those desires and those expectations, especially the unspoken ones, the ones that you just thought was going to happen, I think if you bring them before the Lord, he will go through them and say, this is something I actually gave you as a desire. This is not. This is of me. This is not. And by filtering through that and sifting through that, I think it will allow to create, again, I'm going to harp on the word intimacy because as someone who's trying to be a sexologist, intimacy is so multifaceted. And I think we don't understand how it's connected in every way. Because when you have intimacy, true intimacy, you create safe spaces. You can't have a safe space with God if you're not intimate with him. If you're going to have intimacy with your partner, you create a safe space. Intimacy is what allows for vulnerability, for transparency, for honesty, for openness, all of these things. And if you're not allowing that intimacy to flourish or to grow, then you're not going to be able to walk through certain spaces with your head held high because you have a level of confidence. And so after you grieve, go to God and ask him to help you reframe your expectations. And I also just ask that you would kind of have a self-examination period and ask yourself, are you being faithful to God because you actually love him and because you're thankful that he saved you, he saved your soul, that you were taken out of darkness and now stepping into his marvelous light? Or are you faithful to God because you expected something from him? You expected that because you had a traumatic experience that he would help you forget. Or you expected that because you came out of a terrible marriage that he would give you a new one, or that he would, you know what I mean? Whatever the case may be, you can sit with yourself and figure out what type of a reward did you expect from God from being faithful? Are you just going to church because it's a checklist, or because you actually love him and you want to deepen your relationship with him? You want to curate that intimacy with him. These are questions that I want you to sit with yourself. So again, the homework is grieve for 24 hours. Have yourself a 24-hour funeral and then sit and give God those unspoken expectations. Next is to do a self-examination and figure out, why are you faithful to God? And then in all that, I want you to just remember a key thing is to remember that, just like I've had to tell myself, you're not behind, you're not broken, you're not bad for wondering if this being a good girl was a scam. God has not overlooked you, he's not dismissed you, and he hasn't forgotten you. There is a deeper story unfolding, but you have to trust him with the process to believe that. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up. I hope that you guys, I know I say this every time, but I mean this with sincerity. I hope you guys hear my heart when I talk about this, because the moment I heard the story about the good girl and grieving, it broke my heart. Because again, I am a product of that. I know what it's like to feel like you follow the rules and then you think by a certain age you'll have had everything that you're supposed to have, that you'd be retired by 35, that you would have been married by 30, that you would have kids by 25, that you would have, I know I'm just throwing numbers out there, but you expected that God would have followed a certain timeline. And I think that is where we make the mistake, is that we put God on a timeline and expect him to follow it. And when he doesn't, we are disappointed when we never submitted that timeline to him first to find out if it was actually in line with him. Because the Bible does also say his ways are not our ways, he doesn't operate in the same time as us. So if you've had a timeline in your head and how everything is supposed to unfold and it hasn't unfolded that way, you're now sitting in resentment. That goes again with the unspoken expectation. You had a timeline that you thought God was going to follow and then he didn't. Because one thing I know about God, if you tell him you want something by a certain time, he's going to be like, psych. So I really hope that in me having this conversation, whether you fall in the category of good girl, good guy, or bad girl, bad guy, which again, I hate those phrasing because it's absolute and I don't think it leaves room for nuance or context. But if should you fall under one of those categories, I think really take the time to sit with yourself. Are you a bad guy, bad girl because you're rebelling or you've been hurt or you've been traumatized, or because you thought that being good was such a scam, you decided to overcorrect and go completely to the left? And even with that, I would implore you to grieve that hurt and pain. Sit with yourself and figure out what those unspoken expectations were and do everything that I said for someone who considered themselves good. I'm asking you to do some introspection to figure out why you feel one way or the other about this topic. And I'd love for you to share with me your thoughts. Again, I wanted to be very intentional about my words and what I said. So if it seems like I was slowing down my speech, it's just because I don't want to speak out of terms. Yes, a lot of times I give my opinions on things, but when it comes to these types of topics that I understand it's a heart issue, I want to be gentle. I want to be kind. I want to be compassionate and empathetic um, for whoever could be listening, because I understand that this is not a lighthearted topic to discuss. But yeah, I would love for you to comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your feelings. Let me know your emotions when it comes to this. What are you feeling? What comes up for you? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it resentment? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? All of these emotions are information. I would love for you to tell me what the source of that information is, what's bringing that up. But yeah, with that, I am going to wrap up today's episode. Once again, I thank you so much for taking your time to listen to me and checking out Sorin's Soapbox. If you want to follow me, I'm currently on Instagram, and I have to figure out what I'm doing with my TikTok. But for now, Instagram is where you can mainly find me. I really need to take the time to actually just set up my social media in a way that's cohesive. But for now, you can follow me on Instagram at Kathleen Tanya _. That's KATHLEENTANIA _ and come chat with me, come talk to me. Let me know your thoughts and feelings in regards to everything we talked about today. I'd love to know how the month of August has been going for you so far. I'd love your thoughts on us finding our cousins in Scotland and what's that like. I'd also love to know what your millennial midlife crisis is looking like. What are the hobbies, activities, and things that you're essentially clinging to as your escapism? And lastly, I would love your thoughts and feelings on the topic of being a good girl or a good guy versus being a bad girl, bad guy, and how you stand on that. So, with that being said, I will see you guys next time. And until then, your girl is off her soapbox. See ya.